So recently I made this cinematic short film and I had a couple of people asking me how I did it with no gear, no time, and no budget. So today I'm gonna break down from start to finish everything involved and how I did it. And you're gonna tag along. Welcome to Lawson's Discount Film School. Today, I felt really passionate about teaching everyone some stuff about film, and that's why I hired out this lovely little venue. Wrong! I'm not here. I'm a figment of your imagination. You're going insane. I'm actually in my garage. Code. So, today we're going to be breaking down all the aspects of what went into making my little short film. But before we break any of that down, we need to figure out what are those aspects? Wow! And those are the three main pillars of filmmaking, and that's your pre-production, production, and your post-production. So first of all is your pre-production. This is where the nerds hang out. The guys that typically make a lot of money, like your producers, figuring out all the logistics. This is where your scripting happens. This is where your budget gets doled out. And this is where your lighting and gear preferences get chosen. So basically your who, what, when, where, and how the fuck are you gonna actually manage to pull this off? So that leads you into production. This is where you quite literally produce what you planned on making. Pretty straightforward. Don't deviate from the script. Don't deviate from the storyboard all that much. And if you do, you're an idiot. And finally, you have your post-production. This is where the skinwalkers exist. This is your editors, your colorists, and your sound designers. The people that never leave their homes, but God bless them because they make this shit actually palatable to watch. I'm talking about you, Aiden. You need to get outside. Touch grass. So with that being said, let's actually watch the film I made so you can actually get a better idea of how all this comes together as a final product.
I started out as a chubby kid. People treated me differently. Since then, my sister was my biggest inspiration. It's been a 9-year journey. It wasn't overnight. Because if it was easy, everyone would do it. That's not to say there hasn't been times I've fallen off. I'm not perfect. These fitness influencers that sell you a dream body in 6 months, it's not realistic. The journey is long. Nothing's easy or instant. It's a lot of early mornings and more late nights. It's discipline, it's grind, it's the sacrifices along the way. It's something that's only forged by your own strength. It's what carries me with more confidence. It's the respect that it earns you. Because greatness resides in non-stop discipline.
So, I know what you're thinking, and yeah, mid. So basically, that looks like it should be shot for at least a few dollars and had at least a few people on it. We had $0 and 2 people, and pretty much the equipment you can see here in the room. Really not much to play with. So stands the question, how the fuck did I actually manage to pull any of this off with no budget, no crew, barely any time to shoot it? And to answer that, we need to go all the way back to the start at the script.
360 in the contract. I just take the contact. I bring it back. I'm running on the fast break behind the back. Yeah.
So, time to go over the script. Script is the basis for any good film production. So, with that being said, bit of context, I had full creative control in making this script and what I wanted to do with it. But I did have 4 stipulations. So, the 4 stipulations I had with writing the script was firstly, keep it short and sweet. Had to be between 1 and 2 minutes long. Secondly, I had to show off Franco as a personal trainer and what he could do, make him look all cool. And then thirdly, I had to keep it relatable and human. I didn't want this to come off across as better than you, and I didn't want to come off as Franco is looking down upon people. It wanted to be human and relatable. And then fourth and finally, it had to incorporate the acronym GRIND, which Franco came up with. And that was pretty much the only thing I had to go off of for writing the script. And speaking of which, here it is. Here's the script I wrote. So with the script, I wanted to do what any good film wants to do, and I want to tell a story of a hero's journey. What I wanted to do with this was turn it into a gradual rising story, turning Franco from a relatable character into someone who is admirable by the end of the short film. So if you turn the script on its side, each line adds intention, and it creates a graph of low stakes, low tension to hopefully rising tension to the top. And this here is where I inserted the acronym GRIND, because that's when the audience is most likely to remember what the fuck I'm saying, because that's when they're most emotionally invested. How do they make it like that? How do they give tension to this script? So first thing I did was I broke the script into two halves. So first half, I want it to be relatable and down to earth. And second half, I wanted it to slowly and gradually rise in tension with repetition. So let's look at the first half. I had Franco say things like, I started as a chubby kid. I looked up to my sister and I'm not perfect. I've fallen off. All those three things he said are all true, and they all make him relatable and down to earth because he is starting at the same point the audience is. And the second half had climbing tension through the use of repetition, where it started out saying pretty simple statements like it wasn't easy, it wasn't overnight, all the way to finishing at it's about the respect that it earns you. A pretty hard jump in terms of just what a statement kind of feels and what it gets across, because I wanted the final statement to be more impactful than the first. So the audience feels like shit's happened. Then at the very end, as I said, put in the acronym, most likely to remember it. So once you have your script finished, you don't want to just go out and shoot it. That's stupid. You're not going to really know what you're going to need to do. So what I did, read line by line and determine what line needs what visuals. So I wrote this, a shot list. This entails every single shot I need for the final product to be finished. And then using said shot list and the script, I wrote it into a paper edit. That way I knew roughly on paper what the final thing would look like, and that helped me greatly when it came to production. So I knew what I needed to shoot, when and where, and how. So with that being said, it's on to production. Production. Let's talk about everything I did with cameras, lighting, and cinematography to make this look like the way it does. So first things first is what you're probably wondering. Gear. What did I end up shooting this on? How did I light it? What did I use? And like usual is the exact same thing you're watching this video on, which is my Sony a7 III with a 24-70mm G Master lens and an Aputure 120D and a youngnuo stick light, as well as a couple extra of those that I got my friend Matt to bring along because he gaffed this whole thing. So once again, thank you, Matt. Very appreciative, couldn't have done it without you. So next thing is the locations. How do they actually end up shooting all this for free in places you typically have to pay for, like a gym and an Airbnb? Well, that's simple. You use what you have, once again. Franco actually works at a gym and graciously let us shoot at his own gym after hours. And I live in a home, Franco lives in a home, we just shot in our homes. And for the exteriors, we just use a park and a public car park. You don't need to hire out any place or get any special permissions like you usually do if you go through the proper channels, just shoot it. No one cares. Just get in and out before anyone kicks you out. You should be fine. So with that all being said, let's just jump into it and break down some shots and see how I did it. First things first is the establishing shot. Pretty much all the exterior shots here with Franco, I lit them all by just using the sun. We didn't use any special equipment, literally just the sun at the side, and yeah, just shooting with daylight around like golden hour around 5:30 to 6, and yeah, just use what you got. Exterior shot like this, Franco leaving the gym. Basically what we did with the Aputure 120D for the entirety of the outside shots was we used it as a moonlight source. So we were trying to fake the moon. Basically just had it off camera left or right 90% of the time with a blue gel to make it look nice and bluish and moonlight. Then we had the stick light off camera left just to get a bit of fall off on the face like you can see here, as there's a shadow on one side and light on the other. This creates good depth and just, yeah, stuff like this just helps. So for the shots with Franco's in his house, we did the same strategy for both shots, was key light with the orange and backlight with the blue. So we had the backlight outside to once again fake the moonlight and shoot through the windows. And shooting through the windows allows us to fake moonlight. Like you can see here in this shot where Franco's sitting down, we had the light just off camera left shining through, and basically it creates this nice little pattern on the side, and then we shoot into the L of the room like you can see here. Creates a lot of depth. That way when you have the subject as the foreground sitting in the chair, you can just key light with a bit of orange and then boom, you've got some nice color contrast and a bit of depth all in one. Shots like Franco getting into the car here, and also the sequence where he's skipping and boxing, I used street lights. I didn't use a single bit of lighting or equipment for this. It was just street lights and just framing. So how'd I do it? I basically just found the street light. You want to bring your scene forward and then to the left or the right. This way it can act as a natural overhead lighting rig and also get that fall off, making sure there's shadow on one side of your subject's face or on the scene. Street lights most people steer clear of in cinematography, but I think they can be really useful in a pinch if you don't have any extra equipment, because they're just a naturally really nice overhead light. And they're typically sodium vapor street lights and they have this beautiful orange hue to them. So it just naturally lends itself to skin tones. This isn't exactly lit too well because it's a pretty flat thing. So if it looks flat and you're working with just basic shapes, lean into it. So that's what I did. I decided to do a match cut with this glass shot with this, the weight. Even though this shot here, you can see on the camera right, there's a bit of foreground element created by some gym equipment and some stuff and the shoe and then all the background. There's good depth in this shot, but the fact I'm still playing with shapes really elevates the shot prior to it. So for the gym interior shots, we actually approach this quite differently. One of the things as cinematography you always want to do is backlight everything just because it looks great, but not so much when you're shooting a PT. When you're trying to show off someone's muscles and physique, backlighting doesn't really do the trick. A silhouette doesn't have muscles. What does have muscles is someone who's lit from the top. So that's exactly what we did. So this is the money shot of the entire video. So how did I manage to light this? Just above Franco, there's 2 lights taped to the ceiling, and then in front is the Aputure 120D for softbox just off camera right. And that's pretty much it. We got that natural fall off in the scene because the room is so big, the light naturally falls off. Don't need any cutters. As Franco, you can see he's kicked out from the edge because, you know, we have 1 light behind his head and then we have 1 just in front. And then we have the Aputure 120D off to the side just to wrap some light around to kind of show off the physique and the character of the whole thing. Right, and shot when he's outside working out in the gym, you can literally see it's just a couple of lights from the gym itself. And then I just side lit with both of the stick lights just to create that nice edge light, because when you're shooting gym stuff, you basically want to top light and edge light as much as you can. So for this whole video, it's kind of like riding that line between, do I want to make this look really punchy and really over the top to show off the muscles and the physique, and do I want it to make it look cinematic? And I have shots like this where he's coming to the home and cooking, and that looks cinematic. And then I have the shots where he's at the gym training, extremely heavily punchy and edge lit to really show off the physique. So it's kind of riding that line and keeping it within bounds as much as I can. So that's some of the shots and what I did to kind of achieve them. So now that we're done with the production, let's move on to the post-production. So now we're into the post-production. This is where the editing, color grading, and sound design takes place. So first things first, let's talk about the editing. So now onto the editing section. So what I like to do is do a rough cut first. This is typically what every editor does. Just get your visuals out on the timeline in a rough layout so you can figure out what the fuck to do. So if you remember, I actually did a paper edit earlier. This means that I didn't have to do any brain power. I literally just pulled up a worksheet, started bringing in the footage and just going, oh, this one put here, this one put here, big man, no brain, do work. Pretty simple. And within literally an hour, I had a rough cut done, which in terms of editing, fast, good, happy. And then after the rough cut was the fine cut. And this is where you just go in and refine the cut. You just cut down all the excess fat and trim it to the beat and make it fit and feel more snappy. So after the finer cut, it was time for me to go and start changing some stuff and, you know, adding what I feel needed to be added or taken away. The big thing I noticed after watching it was it fell flat. By the end of the video, it ended here, right on the grind acronym and cut to black. I personally felt this wasn't that good, and I felt like something's missing. I felt like I watched this 1 minute video, I got to the acronym and it was just falling short. I felt like I was invested and then just left hanging by the end of the video. And as an editor, that's awful because I feel like I was disrespecting my audience's time. Yeah, an acronym, that's cool and a motto to live by, but it just didn't hit the way I wanted it to. So what I thought was a good solution was take all the extra footage I had, and mind you, I had a bunch of extra footage, and make a montage out of it. So that's what I did. I grabbed all the extra footage and cut it into a bit of a montage. Then I chose a different song from the same artist in a similar key. And this song was really upbeat and super energetic. And it felt like the same thing I was watching before, but it flipped a switch. So when I combined the montage with the energetic song, it felt like an energetic ending. It felt like I got rewarded for sitting through the whole way. And as an editor, that's the best thing you can do, is making your audience feel like they're being rewarded for sitting through and watching something. So with that being said, I was really happy with where the edit was. So it's time to move on to the color grading. Let's talk about color grading and what I actually did to get the colors looking the way they did in the final product. Here's an example of before and after. As you can see, some of these shots barely look like they've been touched. The tones and general color palette looks a lot nicer, but in general, it doesn't look like there's been too much done, and that's for good reason. And the reason why this doesn't look like there's been too much altered in terms of the coloration of the video is because I shoot everything in camera as closely as possible as I can get to the final product. And for me, that means dialing in the settings as close as possible with the color temperature, picture profile, and the dynamic range on set on the day. You may be hearing that, and if you're a seasoned veteran, you think, why am I not shooting S-Log all the time? And that's because cameras like the Sony a7 III and any of the Sony cameras that aren't just extremely expensive kind of struggle in low light in S-Log. You can look at the data and see prosumer cameras like this artists actually struggle quite a lot in low light when they're shooting high dynamic range. That's why I usually shoot all the night scenes in picture profile 2 on this camera, and the outside scenes in picture profile 7. That's why the outside scenes look gray and the inside scenes look pretty much the same. And that's because I'm leaning into the strength of this camera. And the strengths in this camera is it's really good in low light when it's in the right settings, and it's really fucking bad to color grade when it's not in the right settings. And there's no hard and fast rule, but I find it's a lot easier to get the colors where I want them to go when I'm shooting in low light settings in a low light scenario. So if that being said, what did I actually do with the colors and the color grading after I shot it? And if you can't tell, it's teal and orange. I always kind of push for teal and orange when it's for a cinematic thing because just naturally looks the best. So what did I do? I put orange in the highlights and I put blue in the shadows, and I used the HSL qualifier to really put more blue in the shadows and more orange in the highlights. As for the rest of it, I pretty much just put orange in the midtones of all the outside scenes and orange in the highlights, and I just touch of blue in the shadows. Because a good cinematic image is mainly the lighting on set. The color grading isn't really going to push it that much further if it's a good shot. The main thing I notice in color grading is the best shots I get on set, I often have to touch the least, and the worst shots on set, I have to often touch the most. So with that being said, let's go on to the sound design. Sound design. Let's talk about everything I did to make this video sound cinematic and impactful. So when it comes to sound design, most people think Foley. And Foley is the art of adding sound to stuff like clothes, feet tapping on the ground, grabbing a drink, sipping it, stuff like that. Now, Foley is usually done for films where you have dialogue because you're actively not recording all the extra stuff because you want a clean slate for your dialogue. Now, if you notice, this film doesn't have any dialogue in it. So I didn't have to worry about Foley because most of it was already recorded on set and tied to the footage. So if this video, since I didn't have to focus so much on Foley, I wanted to take a step back and really focus on adding the impacts, transitions, and overall punch to the whole thing. So if that being said, for better context, let's just listen without any sound design.
I started out as a chubby kid. People treated me differently. Since then, my sister was my biggest inspiration. It's been a 9-year journey. It wasn't overnight. Because if it was easy, everyone would do it. That's not to say there hasn't been times I've fallen off. I'm not perfect. These fitness influencers that sell you a dream body in 6 months, it's not realistic. The journey is long. Nothing's easy or instant. It's a lot of early mornings and more late nights. It's discipline, it's grind, it's the sacrifices along the way. It's something that's only forged by your own strength. It's what carries me with more confidence. It's the respect that it earns you. Because greatness resides in non-stop discipline.
So it sounds pretty flat. It feels like you're watching something that feels finished, but you can't quite put your finger on why it doesn't feel good. And it kind of feels like you're just watching a show reel or just some random montage. So if that being said, let's just listen to the sound design only for that portion.
Strength, I've got a superset. A1 get a minute rest.
So there's probably a couple weird sounds in there you didn't expect or even hear on your first watch through, and that's by design. So as I said before, filmmaking isn't real. You can kind of play into that. These sounds don't have to be realistic. They don't have to be there. Half the shit you hear in a movie, it sounds so realistic and it makes you feel like you're there, but 90% of the time it's dudes cracking celery or fucking stamping shit in a sandpit. None of it's real when it comes to filmmaking, so lean into it and play into that strength. And the biggest thing I did with this video was an emphasis on expectations and payoffs, like I said before. That means using stuff like this, a riser. So with the sound design, the main thing I wanted to use was risers and other tricks to make the cuts feel less noticeable. Because risers subconsciously prime the audience to expect something's going to happen when that tone reaches its highest velocity. That's what it does. It cuts to the next scene. Subconsciously makes the editing feel a lot more smooth. And that's a secret power of sound design. It can really help the editor make the cuts feel smoother because you want the audience not to feel like they're watching a video. You want them to be immersed. And that's a key thing you can do with good sound design. So with that being said, that's pretty much the key of sound design. It can really aid an edit because if you notice the cut, you've done a bad job. So that's why I like to use sound design. It kind of helps cover that stuff up and makes it a lot more seamless for the audience. So with the sound design complete, that means so is the video. That's pretty much what it takes from start to finish to create a cinematic short film. If you like this video, feel free to like and subscribe. It'd mean a lot. These videos take a while to make and I don't really make them too often because I'm quite busy making music videos and short films like this. So if you want, feel free to follow my Instagram here to watch the behind the scenes and ask me any questions or whatever. Other than that, I've been Lawson. You've been watching a very long time and I appreciate that. Goodbye, it's very late.